production funding for Behind the Headlines is made possible in part by
the Bartlett Area Chamber of Commerce and its member A2H, engineers, architects, and planners, creating an enhanced quality of life for our clients and community. To learn more about A2H's services and markets, visit a2h.com.
The WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
The new head of Memphis Animal Services, tonight on Behind the Headlines. I'm Eric Barnes, publisher of the Memphis Daily News. Thanks for joining us. I'm joined tonight by Alexis Pugh, new head of Memphis Animal Services. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Along with Bill Dries, senior reporter with the Memphis Daily News. So we'll talk about all kinds of things, your goals. You've been in the job just 2 months, but talk about, let's just start there, your goals for Memphis Animal Services, which has been in the spotlight, which has had, I think everyone would say, some real troubled times. Your short-term goals and your long-term goals, and then we'll break all that down.
Sure. Well, in the short term, really what we're looking at now is a ground-up reorganization. And it's so critical, I think, in any operation that you have the right people doing the right jobs and the right segmentation of those responsibilities. So I'm taking a really hard look right now at how are we built organizationally? Do our job descriptions need to be updated? Do we need to have different people doing different roles and better segmenting those roles? And getting all of those positions filled with the right people to be a part of this change that we're all hoping to see. So that's really sort of my immediate short-term goal that I'm working on at this point. The long-term goals are, of course, reduced euthanasia, more live outcomes, more positive outcomes for animals. And our ultimate goal is to end time and space euthanasias.
Which are what? For people not as familiar with this,
sure,
that means...
Sure. So we're a public safety agency. So euthanizing animals that pose a danger to our community is something that is part of our core mission. And humanely euthanizing animals that are sick, that are suffering, that this is the most kind outcome for them. What we want to avoid is having to euthanize an animal that is adoptable, that is healthy, that is able to be placed, simply because we don't have the space in our facility and this animal has been there too long. And that is how we qualify a time-space euthanasia. And so that's really our countdown to zero that we're trying to achieve.
Your staff, let's go through, you talk about staff. How many staff members are there in Memphis?
Sure. So our complement, as approved by City Council, is 51 full-time staff people. We do also have about 20 part-timers that come in varying degrees of hours. Some are students, some are hoping to get full-time positions. But so we're right around that 75 mark of actual employees who come to Memphis Animal Services and do work.
And is there one, I apologize for not knowing this, but I just kind of want to talk it through with you. How many facilities are there? Is it all one facility? And talk about that.
Sure. So we have one physical location, and that is on Appling City Cove, which is right off of Appling Road. It is a beautiful new facility that was built not that long ago, replacing the older facility that had been on Chulahoma. So we have one physical shelter location. However, a big part of our operation are our field operations, where our animal control officers cover all of the city of Memphis, and then we're supported by Shelby County Health Department agents for the unincorporated part of the county.
Okay. And I want to turn to Bill, and you can ask a question, but before, because it's not really, there's been such a spotlight and some real negative things have happened with Memphis Animal Services prior to you being there, and so maybe you could real quickly run through, for those who haven't followed as closely as others, some of the some real sad things and some awful things and some just mismanaged things that have happened with Memphis Animal Services over the last few years.
The agency has moved to different divisions in city government, starting with really the administration of Willie Harrington into the administration of A.C. Wharton. A.C. Wharton's first day on the job as mayor in October of 2009, you had investigators from the District Attorney General's office as well as the Sheriff's Department in the Memphis Animal Shelter investigating some of the allegations there.
Those allegations being?
Those allegations involved basically the processes for animals coming into the shelter. They involved some allegations which the investigation later did not find any evidence of, that some of the animals were being used in dog fighting rings, things like that.
The phrase was sort of sold out the back door. They were
Yeah.
coming in the front door and being sold out the back door.
Right.
But those were not proven.
Those allegations were not backed up by the investigation. Okay. But what the larger problem turned out to be was that basically you needed a better system of accounting for the animals, the care of the animals. Cameras were installed at the shelter. There were some problems with that early on because the cameras were on, then they were not on.
And the cameras were there meant for people to be able to watch and kind of observe. Volunteers could see that there wasn't mistreatment. And people did.
Mm-hmm. And people did. I mean, there were organizations who organized watches, basically, of the cameras. So when the cameras went off, everybody noticed it who was involved in this very vital issue.
And then towards the end of his administration, Mayor Wharton appointed I don't know him, I don't know anything about him, other than he was not an animal person. He was someone from who'd been a manager or director at the post office and was put in charge for that last, 6 months, a year of
it was a little more than 6 months.
So I saw you nodding through some of what Bill was saying in terms of not that these were good things, but you meanwhile, through much of this time, you were the executive director of the Humane Society, and then you were at the Mid-South Spay and Neuter. So you were sort of watching this as from the sidelines, but it involved sidelines, right? I mean, your thoughts back then on everything that was happening and what you now learned from all those missteps and problems as you go forward. And then we'll go back to Bill.
Sure. Obviously, I think I probably had a little bit more of an inside view of what was going on than perhaps some folks who don't work in the animal welfare world. And that meaning I would go to MAS quite often at the Humane Society personally to pick up injured animals that we would transfer into our care. While at Mid-South Spay and Neuter, we did a partnership to help them get some adoptable animals spayed and neutered to try to increase those live outcomes. So there were some partnerships that occurred there. Also, while I was at the Humane Society, I initiated and we came over and did some on-site staff training to help their animal control officers with handling, cleaning protocols. So I had some awareness there. But I would say my real takeaway is twofold. One, I saw an opportunity for better processes. I think staff craves, and I've seen it in my 2 months there, they are swimming upstream. Many of them that want to do the right thing, they're swimming upstream because it's a constant game of catch up. There are efficiencies and processes that can be put into place to make their jobs easier and allow them to focus more on the things like working with adoption or potential adopters in the kennels. But we're so busy doing administrative paperwork, we can't get caught up on that. Secondly, I think there was, and I think I'm okay to say this, I don't think that there was top level down support that this organization needed, meaning I don't think that past mayors or past higher level administrators said, this is a priority to us. I care that this changes, and I care that we become a progressive shelter. Mayor Strickland does care. I know that he and his wife personally rescue pets. He and I have had multiple conversations that this is not just a professional concern for him. It is a personal and emotional concern, and that radiates down. My direct supervisor, Chief Operating Officer Doug McGowan, there is a commitment to improvement, and I feel that support, and I think that that's going to be so essential as we move forward and try to implement change.
Yeah, Bill.
It also seems as if Memphis Animal Services, what a lot of folks knew as the animal shelter, had really not shifted along with our increased awareness of animal welfare, the welfare of our pets in all of this too. Has the world kind of changed around what we traditionally regarded as Memphis Animal Services?
I think the world has changed nationally in terms of what we look at as the role of a municipal shelter. Historically, it was very segmented, where the nonprofit community had this sort of positive, progressive approach, and the municipal shelters were sort of associated with this dog catcher era, this sort of dark, prison for pets kind of attitude. And what we're seeing nationally is more and more municipal shelters adopting more of the philosophies from the private sector, from the nonprofit sector, and saying, hey, we can be a humane organization too. We can be a progressive shelter. We can get rid of time and space euthanasias. And so I think other large municipal shelters around the country have done it, and that's really the path I hope to lead our team on, is to get us to that place where we don't have to think of ourselves as that prison for pets. It can be a stopping point on their way to their forever home.
Yet, when you were appointed, you and the mayor both made it clear that Animal Services has a basic mission that is basically the public's safety from stray animals who are out there. So that's a part of the mission that other organizations, the nonprofit organizations, do not necessarily have.
Yeah, and that's a part of the mission that has to be first and foremost and can't be ignored. You know, we look at the headlines just this week about the little boy that was attacked. You know, there are animals in this community, through no fault of their own, through genetics, through how they were raised or treated by humans, that are not safe to be replaced in our community. And the approach to that is twofold: strong enforcement through animal control operations, strong enforcement through our court system, and then most importantly, more proactive spay and neuter to prevent the overpopulation, which is where you see a lot of these animals and those behavior concerns develop. It's in animals that weren't really wanted in the first place and were part of that overpopulation.
I have so many questions on what you just said. No, in a good way. I mean, because in a good way. I mean, it's a very sad thing. I mean, some of this is just really sad, the mistreatment and the all that. But glossing over that just for a second, how many? I mean, how many animals in a given year? I don't want to hold you to a hard number, but a sense of how many animals are out there that you all have to pick up that are dangerous, that are past a point of being, you know, their behavior modified or anything like that. I mean, is it 100 a year? Is it thousands a year? How many stray dangerous animals are out there?
Sure, and so I would say it is hard to quantify because, again, when we talk about processes and tracking, we haven't had, I think, the right people in place to accurately quantify that. What I would say is we're taking in the last fiscal year, so calendar year, fiscal year 2016, we took in just under 10,000 animals at Memphis Animal Shelter. I would say it's fair to say that 5 to 10% of those are not safe to be placed out in the community. How then does, you talked about spay and neuter, which used to run Memphis, Mid-South Spay and Neuter, and Humane Society. I mean, how do those three organizations, your Memphis Animal Services, the public city run, and the two nonprofits, how do they work together in an ideal setting? If Memphis Animal Services is doing a great job, does that put those other ones out of business? Not in a bad way, but in a good way. I mean, or do they always have a role supplementing what you do? Well, I think any nonprofit will tell you that the ultimate goal of a nonprofit is to put themselves out of business, so their service is no longer needed. So long term, I would think that would be ideal. However, I think they each provide such a specific subset of need that their role won't go away anytime soon. So the Humane Society's focus on injured and abused. At Memphis Animal Services, with the volume coming in, the fact that we're an open admission facility, we don't have the ability to provide either long-term medical care or some of that more expensive orthopedic surgery, things like that, due to financial constraints as well as the time and the staffing. So there's really a need and a role for that organization to fill that gap for those animals that might otherwise fall through the cracks due to those medical issues.
And the Humane Society, again, not to put you on the spot, but they handle some couple thousand animals a year, or is it another 10,000?
No, when I was there, our intake was right around 1,500 a year.
1,500, okay.
Yeah.
And then the role, back to my original question, the role of Mid-South Spay and Neuter in this kind of, this mix.
Sure, every community that achieves these lowered euthanasia rates has a strong, low-cost spay-neuter clinic presence. And Mid-South Spay and Neuter, one of the things that I was very proud of that I was able to accomplish with my team while I was there was that we dramatically increased the number of discounted surgeries that we offered. And by that I mean we were able to, for this entire calendar year, for 2016, if you're on government assistance, you can get your pet fix for $20. And what we were finding is even the discounted rates that we offered across the board, $75 for someone who's choosing to put dinner on the table for their family or get their pet fixed, that's not really a choice. And we're thinking that $20 mark was more reasonable. And so providing an option for pet owners willing to do the right thing, willing to abide by our mandatory spay-neuter ordinance, but who do not have the financial resources is a key component, because one thing every progressive shelter around the country will tell you is a community that succeeds has a strong, proactive, low-cost spay-neuter option. It's essential.
And so roughly how many animals were spayed and neutered last year?
It was just over 4,000. It was about 4,100, and the target goal for this year was above 4,400. And when I left that position to come to this position, we were already at the beginning of the year tracking closer to 5,000.
Two more questions. I'll go back to Bill. Does Memphis Animal Services do any spaying and neutering?
We spay and neuter all of the pets that leave our facility unless they're medically unable to be spayed or neutered.
I can't bring my pet there.
But right now, no, we do not offer public spay and neuter. However, that is absolutely 100% a part of my long-term goal and plan. That would hopefully start with beginning some really strong TNR, which is trap, neuter, release programs. We have a lot of feral cats in our community, and it is considered the most effective way to reduce that feral cat population, or cats that end up in a shelter that really have no business being there and that aren't adoptable. So we're starting to look at how we can do some trap, neuter, release, even a quarterly day where we bring in a bunch of feral cats and get them fixed.
When they're released, are they just released back into the streets, wherever they were?
They are. And that's a hard thing for people outside the animal world to understand. But the challenge is, if you don't put those altered cats back into the colony area where they were, other cats will move in. And so,
oh my gosh, that is fascinating.
Yeah, so it's really important that we focus our goal not on taking cats and moving them out, but rather stabilizing and reducing that colony's population until the point where that colony eventually disappears.
Wow, okay, Bill.
So is the problem with spay-neuter awareness, or are there people who don't think they should do that? Mm-hmm. I mean, what is the hang up there?
There are multiple reasons. The number one reason, according to national studies, and it would be mirrored here because of our population that lives below the poverty line, the number one reason is financial, and whether that be simply the cost of the surgery or it's transportation. I don't have a way to get my dog there. And the Humane Society just got a mobile spay and neuter unit, which was something that I was a part of helping to conceptualize while I was there, to try to reach those people who don't have transportation access. So that's really the number one. I think there's sort of a myth that the number one reason why people don't get their pets fixed is a moral or an objection for some reason. The number one is really financial and access. Then we do get to a segment of the population that is resistant, whether it's a male pet owner who has an unnatural attachment to the anatomy of his male dog.
Mm-hmm. And the kind of macho thing about it, I mean, there is that whole thing of I grew up in a city where there was a real attachment and an association between masculinity and the dog, and Dobermans back then, and pit bulls and all that. So it's not just there is this whole sort of symbol that is truly a cultural thing across the country about vicious, mean, dangerous dogs, and their virility or their fertility is somehow part of that. So I second what you're saying. That's interesting.
And then there's also some myths out there that a lot of people don't know that we at Mid-South Spay and Neuter always try to debunk, and we want to do more education at MAS about this. Myths that it'll change my dog's personality, my dog will get fat and lazy, that it'll take away their masculinity, and there's so many myths associated with spay and neuter that I think just go back historically to people not being raised in an environment where spay and neuter was normal. And I think it's sort of changing that baseline perception that spay and neuter becomes the norm. And so we really tried to focus a lot of our education efforts on the negatives associated with not spaying and neutering. A female dog that's left unspayed is far more likely to get an infection of her uterus called pyometra, which can cause death. Animals, both male and female, are twice as likely to end up getting cancer related to, testicular cancer, prostate cancer, all of those sorts of reproductive system cancers. Animals that are spayed and neutered tend to live longer. So there's, and certainly when we talk about correcting those negative behaviors that sometimes result in people surrendering their pets, Male dogs are less likely to mark, are less likely to fight, are less likely to be aggressive, are less likely to roam and run away from your home. So there's a lot of benefits associated. And so that component of education is essential, particularly in communities where the number of spayed neutered pets is far outweighed by the number of unaltered pets.
We talked at the top of the show about dog fighting. How much of a problem is that here, and is that a mission that Animal Services is involved in? Because dog fighting is a very illegal, but it's a very popular pastime here in Memphis.
Well, I would say this: there's no way, whether you're at the Humane Society, in their cruelty investigator, or our animal control officers, that we're not going to come across it. However, if there's one thing that we know about dogfighting and why folks who maybe don't even think it's that big of a deal, I can't imagine not thinking that, but people need to understand that there is a direct correlation between dogfighting and other crimes. There is always gambling. There's almost always gang involvement. There's guns, there's drugs. There are other crimes usually occurring. So we always try to reach out and partner and not try to handle anything on our own, because you never know if there's an active investigation going on. Organized crime handles a lot of that. So we try not to, and especially because our officers are not armed. So it would be dangerous and unwise and potentially ruin an ongoing investigation if we were to try to autonomously handle that. So when we see signs, and I don't like to share what those signs are because I don't ever want to give anybody any tips. You can Google it, but we don't want to put that out there. But the bottom line is, when we see signs that we know are indicative, we immediately forward that up the chain and get Memphis Police involved. Does that go to
Memphis Police? Okay.
Yeah, and their organized crime division. It's the right way to handle something of that magnitude.
With the prevalence here, and I imagine in other places, but especially here, given my experience just covering stories about that, there is also the perception that the dogs that are involved in dogfighting, first of all, are pit bulls. We always hear pit bulls are involved in it, and that those dogs are irredeemable, unrecoverable, if you will, once they're not in dogfighting anymore. What do you see of that? Are these animals that are beyond saving for that experience?
I would say in those situations, when you look at the large scale, the Michael Vick case and some of the other large ones that the ASPCA handles nationally, it is not something that anyone who is not extremely trained in assessing dog behavior and determining an animal's safety should be determining. What I mean by that is, if we have an animal that was actively involved in dogfighting, it does not mean he is not redeemable, that he can't be replaced into a home or into some sort of environment. But that is not a determination that anyone without a lot of initials behind their name should be making. That needs to be done at the expert level, someone who really has a strong skill set at animal behavior recognition and assessment.
Do you have that expertise?
We do not. But I am looking actively, and I hope to very soon have someone in our management team who comes in with some initials. Now, I will say that there's a lot of terminology thrown around. People talk about having a behaviorist on staff. That's not realistic. There are probably 10 in the country. There are very few people who are PhD level behaviorists. The highest level certification we have in our community is someone who's known as a CPDTKA, which is Certified Professional Dog Trainer Knowledge Assessed, meaning that they've gone through training, they've gone through schooling, and they've tested, and they are getting continuing education credits to keep up their certification. We have several of those in our community, and my goal would be to have one of those on staff as quickly as possible to run that lower level assessment. But again, if we talk about an animal coming out of a known dogfighting situation, we would want to bring in a behaviorist or someone who has even more credentials and is skilled at that, because the one thing I will say when people talk about an animal that is dangerous to people versus dangerous to humans is that more often than not, when someone has told me a dog is dog aggressive and doesn't bite humans, guess who gets bit? humans because they get in the middle of that dog fight to break it up. So there are higher level assessments that need to occur than I think we're capable of at our facility, at least at this point.
Let me ask you, we have a minute and a half left here, and there are so many questions I have. But Target Zero, we talked a little bit, talk about that's a national program that talk about Target Zero.
Sure, so Target Zero, there were some local volunteer rescuers who had started talking to them before I even came into my position. Then they reached out to me. They are a group that has gone to other municipal shelters around the country, seen who's done things well, collected best practices, and they've put together a plan. So they're coming here in October. They'll do a shelter assessment to evaluate where we can make the most improvements and what we need to do. They'll do a town hall meeting on Monday night, October 10th at the Central Library. It is posted on the city website. It's open to the public to get feedback from the community. And then they'll present to us a plan of action featuring best practices from around the country of how we can achieve a zero euthanasia rate for time and space euthanasias within 3 years.
And opportunities for volunteers, that's an opportunity for public input, I assume.
Absolutely.
Because there's clearly a huge number of people who have lots of thoughts and desires on this. Are there opportunities through MAS for volunteers?
Yes, we do volunteer orientation all the time. Call up there, check it out, come up and visit us. We need more volunteers. We want people walking dogs, showing dogs, playing with cats. We need volunteers. More volunteers. There's never too many.
All right, we will leave it there. Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it. Thank you, Bill. And thank you for joining us. Join us again next week.
Production funding for Behind the Headlines is made possible in part by the Bartlett Area Chamber of Commerce and its member A2H, engineers, architects, and planners, creating an enhanced quality of life for our clients and community. To learn more about A2H's services and markets, visit a2h.com.